8:06, Nashville's Morning News on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Good morning to you. It is Wednesday, July 9th, and there is a lot going on. I want to welcome on into the program. He is an attorney. He is a farmer. He is Dustin Kittle. And Dustin, you've been on the radio program before. And I heard Pete Hegseth, and he had a lot of things to say about China and their buying of a bunch of farmland, of course, here in the United States. And I want to get into not only what Pete said, but also what it means, not only for the state of Tennessee, but also, of course, for farmers and our military across America. Because I think that there's a lot here, and it goes pretty deep. And so I'm going to play this audio for you. This is Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth.
I want to know who owns the land around our bases and strategic bases, and getting an understanding of why foreign entities, foreign companies, foreign individuals might be buying up land around those bases. That's something I should be paying attention to on behalf of the American people, on behalf of my department, and on behalf of the president. It's common sense. And so food security, just like energy resilience, just like where we get our water, that's all national security, especially in a contingency. So we would be asleep at the wheel if we were not fully a party to an effort like this to ensure that our nation had the food supply it needs. But specifically, our troops have what they need on our bases so that in those moments you can rely on us here in the United States to provide that security. So no longer can foreign adversaries assume we're not watching and we're not paying attention and we're not doing something about it, because we are. So, Brooke, thank you very much.
So it seems like, Dustin, there's a couple of different things going on here. Number one is China buying farmland just, as part of our own issues with food security, as Pete Hegseth says, but also around military bases. So let's talk a little bit about this. You were one of the first ones that was sort of a whistleblower when you saw that China and entities related to China were buying up farmland in America.
Yes, that's right, and I appreciate you having me on, Dan. If you go back and look over the last 25 years, China specifically went from owning 10,000 acres of American farmland to now they own, by even the most conservative estimates, 300,000 acres. And the truth of the matter is we don't know how much land China owns in the United States, because the program that was implemented, which is a FIDA, it's a Foreign Investment Disclosure Act, allows for voluntary reporting. And so you can imagine that there is a lot of reporting that has not went on through the years. And again, the 300,000 acres that we know these Chinese investors own, that's just what has been brought above table that they have voluntarily reported. But we're finding out all the time that there are more acres that are owned. And to Secretary of Defense's point there, a lot of this came up about 5 years ago, and it was from a whistleblower at an Air Force base out of North Dakota. And they said there are Chinese investors who have purchased land that are essentially within vision of the entire base, and they are monitoring airflow in and out. And at that particular base, that is where we were developing some of the latest technologies as far as unmanned aircrafts and drones. And as everyone has seen over the course of the last year, that is the future of military action, is using unmanned aircrafts and drones. And here we had Chinese entities that were within, literally hundreds of yards of being able to see into that military site. And I'll expand on that just a little bit further. We now have found out over the last 5 years, there are 19 other strategic military sites where Chinese investors, foreign investors, have come in and have bought really what is unusable farmland. It's classified as other, which means it's full of rock. It's not typically been farmed in the past, but they're buying it as farmland around these strategic military sites. And, I appreciate the fact that this administration is speaking up on it. It's the first time that really we've had someone at the federal level that has taken this issue on.
It's crazy because has anybody asked at the time, and I understand Trump is doing this now, but like you said, in the last 5 years, anybody in the Biden administration ask, okay, so what does China want with this unusable land around military bases. I mean, nobody's asking questions until now.
No, and the reality is that our own government, and you know, I think the Trump administration is getting up to speed. And I'll go back to Trump's first administration and say that there were a lot of things that I think flew under the radar. This included that administration did not have a clue about. When you look, though, at the Obama presidency is really where it started. We put Terry Branstad in a position, former Iowa governor, as the ambassador to China. And within a matter of 3 years into Obama's administration, you had Smithfield Pork bought out by Chinese investors. And you're talking about a company that provides 1/8 of the pork across the entire world. And what came with that was 100,000 acres of farmland. And if you look at those years during Obama and the Biden administration, one of the ways that they were doing this was they were using the United States Farm Credit System, which if you go back to 1997, the Farm Credit Administration went to Congress, got approval to start making loans to foreign investors, something that absolutely should have never been done. It's a government-sponsored enterprise. It's a non-profit entity that has tax exemptions, and the American taxpayer has financed foreign investment into our farmland. All of that has went on strategically. You go to the Obama administration, the Biden administration, they've left the board of the Farm Credit System open and vacant so that there was no oversight. And during that period of time, you just looked from roughly 2010 to where we are now, there's been a 250% increase on foreign investment into American farmland.
Is part of what's happening, and you may have said this, but is part of what's happening is you have American entities that are accepting Chinese investment, and so you can't really tell who the investors are in these American entities, but then you drill down and they're Chinese investors. Is that also going on?
That's a huge part of it. And you go back to that AFITA Act, and that was an act that was brought forth by Chuck Grassley out of Iowa, who has been very pro-farmer in his tenure. And I think the AFITA Act was created with good intentions. The problem was there was no teeth to it. And again, you had voluntary reporting, and really the only individual you had to disclose was who was the filing party, who was the name that was on the deed. It didn't go any further than that. And in fact, we found out that there were AFITA documents filed by individuals who we thought, well, this is just a random foreign investor, that you go back and look, and the money that they received to purchase that farmland actually came from the Chinese Communist Party. And, you know, those are shocking facts that we have allowed this to happen completely unchecked. But again, with that AFITA program, it's voluntary reporting to truly know how much farmland we've lost and you know, what we're looking at right now. You'd have to go to every courthouse in the United States and check deeds on it. Because, again, we're relying on paper systems. One of the things that Secretary of Ag Brooke Rollins mentioned the other day, and I'll say I'm not a huge fan of Brooke Rollins. I think she sides with big ag more so than the independent farmers. But one of the things she's taken on is we're going to finally make this database online, and we're going to make it public so people could see it. You know, we're in the year 2025, and these forms are being filled out on paper and are not even being documented digitally. So there's no way to cross-check it. There's no way for the average person to look into it. And there's no checks and balances for, you know, basically ensuring that our government has our best interests at heart.
All right, so I have to jump the traffic, but real quick, I'm going to ask you to answer this question coming back from traffic. So this is all literally on pieces of paper, and so it seems relatively untraceable, untrackable. Is that done on purpose by our federal government? It's 8:15. Time to check the roads on WTN. Today, high of 90, scattered thunderstorms as well. Appreciate you listening to Nashville's Morning News. Dustin Kittle, attorney and farmer, joining us talking about the Chinese owning a bunch of farmland across America, particularly around military bases. And you say this is, you know, it's all done on paper, so it's you can't trace it. Is that done on purpose so that people can't figure out what's going on?
It almost has to be. And you go back there, probably 10 to 15 years ago, a report came out essentially saying we don't have a clue how much farmland is being purchased by foreign agents. And, what I would say is at that time they came forward and said, we have to find a way to make this digital so that we can look at it. And here we are, we're 15 years later, and we still have not created that digital database. And this is what I would say with Brooke Rollins. I appreciate the soundbite. I appreciate the deterrence of bringing this forward, but we've got to hold her accountable in this. It's one thing to win the press conference, especially on the heels of some of her statements as far as giving amnesty to agricultural immigrants, and which caused a lot of backlash. And, she's come back immediately with this American Farmland Protection Act, which is great. It's my understanding it's going to be turned into an executive order by President Trump, but we've got to hold them accountable. We've heard these words before. We have to be sure that we are protecting. We have a watch as far as foreign investment coming in, because a buzzword you're going to hear over the next 5 years is agri-terrorism. There have been, the FBI has investigated in just the last 2 years over 100 cases of where individuals have come into this country with bad intentions as far as agri-terrorism, and I'm talking about funguses that they have brought into this country that could go into crops and eliminate them. And so, this is broader than just an issue of being sure that our citizens have access to this farmland. It's a true national security issue.
We had that, I think it was Boston, where we had a couple of people come in from China, and they had some sort of a fungus. And that's where I believe it was the first time that I used that term, agri-terrorism. So let me ask you, Dustin, as we wrap this up, is there anything we can do to take back or buy back somehow this property that China owns around our military bases?
So the answer to that would be yes, and one of the states that's working on that is Missouri, and I really think it's going to need to come from the state level. If you look at the press conference that Brooke Rollins did the other day, Tennessee Governor Bill Lee was there. The state of Tennessee actually does have a law that's on the books, passed in 2023, that would limit foreign ownership as far as farmland. It doesn't take away past, but it prevents as far as the future. Missouri's going another step further. They're going back and clawing back some of these transactions, particularly ones where the AFITA reporting was not done. And I think that you will see other states follow suit. There has been talk that Texas may do so, and Nebraska may follow suit as well. And there probably is not a better deterrent that we could have if we did claw back some of these deals that were consummated through fraud, essentially.
It does seem like, a no-brainer. China's been on our radar for, years and years and years, and now that it's suddenly becoming an issue, now that Trump is in office and they're really paying attention to it, at least that's good, but it just seems like there's a lot of cleanup that has got to happen. One of the other questions I would have, too, is do we have a way to monitor what these folks, the people running these farms, is there a way to monitor what they're doing? Can we spy on them to see if they're spying on us?
Well, an interesting thing on that, you may remember a few years ago when the Chinese spy balloon made its travel across the United States. So, we think now that actually originated from Chinese-owned property. And, there were a lot of people saying, shoot it down. And they may have been flying over their own land during part of it. And so, yes, when it comes to national security issues, I think that we have a duty to at least make sure that what people are saying is going on this farmland is what is actually going on. There is a fine line between privacy rights for public citizens, which I'm all for, but when you cross that boundary as far as national security issues and you have foreign investment coming in at the level that it has and it's at strategic sites, we have to do everything we can to protect the American public, and that includes monitoring what's going on at those sites.
All right. Well, when do you think we'll start to see some real news on this, starting to take shape and the executive order and all of that? Because this is very concerning.
I think in the next 30 days, and I think that the Trump administration will realize this is a win. This is something that the American public can agree on. And, it's been detrimental to the farmers. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
We've lost over 100 million acres of farmland over the last 20 years. However, the rate of farmland that's went to foreign interest, is up 250%. So we're going in the wrong direction here. And, again, I think it's a win for the American public as far as an issue that will be well received. And my hope is that they latch on to it and run with it, because it can be a win-win for the agricultural community as well as for the country as a whole.
All right, Dustin Kittle, how can people get more information if they've got a question for you? Is there a way to follow you on the socials?
Yes, absolutely. So if you go to X, I'm just at Dustin Kittle. I'm back on Facebook now too, and so that account is also at Dustin Kittle, and feel free to send me a message anytime if you've got any questions on anything.
Kittle. And Dustin, always appreciate the intel and the analysis, and great job. It is 8:22, Nashville's Morning News on Super Talk.